Oklahoma Gardening is a proud partner with Shape Your Future, a program of the Tobacco Settlement Endowment Trust. Shape Your Future provides resources for Oklahomans to make the healthy choice the easy choice. Today I'm walking through the Student Farm garden with Candace Bacon from Shape Your Future. It's always nice to get out in the garden, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. It's a great way to walk around, get a little bit of exercise.
Absolutely. But you know, it's a little hotter this time of year.
It is.
And so one of the things that I always think, instead of being strenuous and gardening, it's important to inspect your plants for any diseases or insects that might be happening. So I want to give you guys some tips on how to do that today. So we have squash here next to us. Guess what comes with squash?
Bugs.
Bugs, yes. And in particular, squash bugs are the most prominent one that we have. And we've got a lot of different eggs here. You can see some that are kind of laying right there. They're very distinct as an egg. They're kind of often laid in a cluster, and they're just this kind of bright golden brown color. So one of the best ways to get rid of those, because if you look at how many eggs, there's probably 20 eggs
there's
right
a lot,
there.
yeah.
Right, so we can just kind of get our thumb and kind of squish those and roll those and break those off. And there we go, we've killed at least 20 bugs before they've come out, but I guarantee you there's a lot more in here. So with squash bugs, you want to sort of monitor your population by looking down in the base of your plant.
Okay.
Because we don't like being out in the sun. A lot of these bugs don't like to be out in the sun either. And so they're kind of hiding down in there. And I guarantee you there's, oh, look what we have right there. There's one right there.
Bug.
Yeah. So we've got squash bugs down in here. Spinosad will kind of take care of that. And behind us here, we have another problem that's going on. So it's often, while you want to look at the detail, sort of step back, right?
Look at the bigger picture.
Look at the bigger picture, absolutely. And what doesn't look right?
It doesn't look like it's thriving.
No, it does not. And so what's happening here, we've got vine borers that have kind of attacked these squash vines.
Now, is that also a bug?
So it is kind of this borer. It's like a little bug that will kind of bore into at the base of the vine. And do you see that kind of sawdust stuff coming out? That's a telltale sign. And so what it's doing is it's boring in there, and you can kind of pull that apart. There's a hole in there, and you'll actually find the larva in there. So as it's eating through there, it's pushing that sort of sawdust material out. It's really kind of its frass, its waste. And so what happens is it prevents that water and the carbohydrates and everything from moving through that plant. So you immediately start to see it wilt in the garden, like we all would without water.
Absolutely.
So unfortunately, once it's at this point, there's not a lot you can do to it. You can try to remove that borer, but usually you've just lost the plant already at that point.
So other than bugs, what else would I be looking for when I'm checking my plants?
Yeah, so there's a lot of times that it's not just bug problems, it's environmental problems. And I've got some examples of some tomatoes we can look at.
Okay, perfect.
So unfortunately, you know, you don't always get the perfect plant or produce that you're looking for, but you can learn something from this. So here we've got some kind of funky cucumbers as the way they're growing and that sort of stuff. And this really is a result of poor pollination.
Okay.
So, you know, there's nothing that you necessarily did or we did that caused this. It just sort of is a factor. And a lot of times it's environmental. So, you know, when the flower was blooming and the bee and the pollinators were visiting, or whether it was self-pollination on something, a lot of times it's just the wind, it's the heat, all of that plays into the development of that fruit.
Unpredictable factors.
Exactly. Environmental for sure. Now we also have some other things here. So like this is a really big cucumber, obviously. And you can see kind of how it's got this scarring on the side of it. Essentially, we've had a lot of rain, right? And so what are cucumbers full of? Water. And so what happens is like a water balloon that gets a lot of water all of a sudden, and it sort of stretches that skin out. So this you can peel off and it would still be fine.
So it's still edible?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
It's perfectly edible. Maybe not really using the skin on this or something like that, but definitely still edible with the inside. Now our tomatoes. Tomatoes are king of the garden, right? Do you like tomatoes?
I love tomatoes, especially a fresh salad.
Everybody loves tomatoes, and unfortunately Oklahoma is not not one of the best places to grow tomatoes.
I did not know that.
Because of our heat. And we all love tomatoes. It's something we're still going to keep growing. But our temperatures get so hot and our evening temperatures stay hot too.
Okay.
And that's when pollination happens. And so a lot of times this time of year, you're going to see flowers on your tomato plants, but you won't ever get fruit. And that's because the pollen actually is sterile at a certain temperature.
Okay.
So it just won't work. But we do have some here that we have obviously growing, but we've got some culls that we want to talk about. This is one that is a typical thing that you see in the summertime, and this is called sunscald.
It looks like a sunburn.
It does. And so like us that can get sunburn, if we kind of clean up our tomato vines too much and don't allow some of that vegetation to stay over those fruits, what happens is we can get this sunburn and it just sort of turns to like a water bag right there. And it's not anything that we want to eat at that point. So that is sunscald. It's kind of really severe case of it. Again, like the cucumber, we've got some cracking where it's gotten too much water all of a sudden.
Okay.
You can have things like blossom end rot. This is where the tomato is connected to the stem, but the flower was at this end.
Okay.
So this is why it's called the blossom end. This is a calcium problem. So it's actually not getting enough calcium, but usually there's plenty of calcium in the soil. It's just, it moves through the water. And so it's inconsistent watering that causes this.
Okay.
So again, you know, not pretty. You can also see some other things going on here. Do you see how it looks like stars almost? So that is likely a stink bug, and a stink bug has a little straw that it kind of penetrates into that. And so every time it does that, it scars those cells and then makes that stippling effect or the mottling effect on your fruit. So again, you know, sometimes you have fruit that you're like, okay, I can just cut that out and still use it if you want to. But a lot of times it kind of ruins the fruit overall. So we've got some different things. These were supposed to be like round slicers, and the heat is causing them to have a little bit more of a point to them. So just the heat really affects the development of tomatoes a lot of times. So one of the things I always tell people, if your tomatoes are still looking good, they don't have any yellowing leaves and that sort of thing at the bottom of them, just keep them going through the summertime and they will start producing for you again.
Okay.
So, but don't be deterred if you get some problems. We all do that.
Keep going.
Keep going. Just really, it's important to know the insect you're dealing with. And so proper identification, how to look for them, make sure you're checking down in the base of those plants, under the leaves, right? Because that's where they like to grow and get out of the shade like us.
So if I'm inspecting my plants and I don't know exactly what I'm looking at, is there a way that I could contact you all and try to find out?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's, you know, what extension is all about. So if people want to bring in some of their problems, I see we have some powdery mildew on one of the squashes over there. Again, it's on the lower part of the plant. So you could bring in the symptomatic plant or produce to your local county extension office and they can help you identify it. We also have some really great fact sheets. And so, you know, a lot of times we expect that perfect product, right? Like we're so used to that, but sometimes you can work around it by peeling it and cutting it, but sometimes you want to make sure that you're treating it also.
Absolutely. That's good to know. I'm learning so much.
You know, and it's a great way to get exercise that's not quite as strenuous to kind of go out and walk through the garden.
It's also relaxing. It's been really enjoyable. That's what we're all about here with Shape Your Future, is staying active and eating healthy. So there are a ton of great recipes on our website on shapeyourfutureok.com, as well as ways to stay active.
Well, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
We hope you enjoyed this video as part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on the OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.